Okay, we should be good to go.
Hi, so sorry, having a little bit of technical difficulty on this end, but that's okay. I stalled. It's 11:02 and we've gotten a few more people to join. So good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to your annual civil rights training. It's a requirement of the program, so do make sure you pop in with your supervisor so that they know you attended. And if you could mute yourself unless you're talking, that would be helpful. Of note, one big change this year is there's some addition to the NDS statement. So do go to the website and check it out. And Sam is about to cover that. With that, I want to introduce Sam Blanchard, our nutrition coordinator, who's going to lead us through this training today. So take it away, Sam. Thanks so much.
Thanks everybody for joining. We'll try to keep it really brief for you all so that you can get back to clinic because participants are the #1 priority. So welcome to the Maine WIC Civil Rights Annual Training, Equity for All. And this was, just as a disclaimer, this training was developed by California WIC and adapted for Maine use. So the purpose of this training is that the USDA requires all WIC staff to attend a civil rights training annually, and this is to prevent discrimination in the WIC clinics. For your awareness, both the state and federal WIC protected civil rights categories are listed in a couple different places. So it's in Spirit when participants sign rights and responsibilities. It is also on our webpage. You can see that in our policy section. The non-discrimination statement is also listed there in its own section. And you can also find this on the WIC Shopper app. So if a participant needs to review these, you can direct them to the WIC Shopper app under rights and responsibilities and non-discrimination. These were recently updated, as Ginger mentioned previously. So if a participant is not seeing certain things, it may just be that they might need a update to their WIC Shopper app. So you can help them with that if they have any questions. Also forgot to mention, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to use the chat or just unmute. That's also totally fine, and we can answer any questions that come up. So at this point, I am going to ask if you would unmute or use the chat and have a little interactive section here. What does civil rights mean? Does anybody have a guess or a statement or a word that they want to pop into the chat? What does civil rights mean? No participation at all. Okay. Is anybody there? Great. Okay, here we go. We got a couple. We got one. The right to be, okay, thank you, everybody. Rights of all the people, the right to be treated equitably, treating everyone equally, equality. Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for speaking up. So it's everyone treated equally. Our society was built on the rights for the people by the people. The Declaration of Independence mentions inalienable rights. So we have constitutional and we also have civil rights. Civil rights are the rights of individuals to be treated equally. Civil rights categories must be honored and protected to ensure that people are treated fairly. So the protected categories are mandated not only by the state of Maine, but they are also federal laws. And here's a list of the federal protected categories. As you're going to see, there's a little bit of a change on the state side, but we'll go over these with you. So federally protected categories: race, color, national origin, age, sex, disability, creed, and sexual orientation. Previously, we had an agreement with the USDA and FNS that Maine WIC and the Department of Health and Human Services at the CDC would only process civil rights complaints regarding sex or disability. We would do that internally. And then all other complaints would go directly to the USDA and FNS. But per the Bostock memo, which was dated May 5th, 2020, which I think you have all received in an email, FNS has changed the non-discrimination protected parties and now includes gender identity or sexual orientation. So this means that all complaints moving forward, they skip right over the state of Maine and they go straight to the federal government. Are there any of these categories that you weren't aware of, or are there any questions about this change? And we'll go through the process on how to make a complaint or assist with a complaint later in the presentation. Perfect. So now I'm just going to give you brief definitions of all of these protected categories. If you do have any questions or you need some further training, we also have our trauma-informed care and adverse childhood experiences. We cover a lot of these topics in those trainings, which you can find on the YouTube page or reach out to me and I can get you that link directly. So for race is an individual belonging to one of the accepted anthropological groups or the perception based usually on physical characteristics that a person is a member of a racial group. Color. So color is color of the skin, including shade of the skin within a racial group. National origin. This is a country or part of the world where an individual or his or her ancestors are from. And just to note, most complaints associated with language or accents are covered here in that section. Age, so Age Discrimination Act of 1967 applies to all persons 40 years old of age or older. And sex. Sex is gender, sexual harassment, pregnancy, childbirth, and breastfeeding. Sex includes gender, sexual harassment, as well as pregnancy, childbirth, and breastfeeding status. This means pregnancy-related conditions are protected, including mastitis, gestational diabetes, postpartum depression, loss or end of pregnancy, or recovery from loss or end of pregnancy. Lactation accommodations require employers to provide reasonable time to allow employees to express breast milk and a place to pump in private that is near a workplace. So a toilet stall is not acceptable. So that's covered under the sex discrimination. Disability is the physical or mental impairment, permanent or temporary. Creed is a followed spiritual belief. It's important to note that this does not have to be an organized group or traditional denomination or a world religion in order to be protected. And then finally, there's sexual orientation. The direction of one's affection, sexual or emotional attraction to emotional attractions involving others. In addition to these protected categories, the USDA also requires accommodations for individuals with disabilities and or limited English proficiency. The Americans with Disabilities Act, so the ADA, is the most comprehensive federal legislation that prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities. So who is protected by the ADA? The ADA protects individuals with disabilities. A disability is a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits the individual's major life activities. Major life activity means functions such as caring for themselves, performing manual tasks, walking, seeing, hearing, speaking, breathing, learning, and working. These include functions of immune systems and normal cell growth, digestive, bowel, bladder, neurological, brain, respiratory, cardiovascular, endocrine, and reproductive functions. In addition, women, infant, and children must be accommodated if medically or nutritionally warranted. So this would be accommodated using your nutrition tailoring during an appointment. ADA mandates reasonable accommodations. Reasonable accommodation is a modification or an adjustment to enable individuals with disabilities to have equal access to the benefits and privileges of services or programs. So this could be something like changing existing facilities to make them accessible or usable, acquiring modification equipment, modifying tests or materials or policies, and or materials provided to participants. Limited English proficiency is state and local agencies must take reasonable steps to ensure meaningful access to program information and services by people with limited English proficiency, so LEP. These services include that we provide interpreter services for free, and we provide printed materials in different languages. So who is protected by this? Individuals for whom English is not their primary language and who have limited ability to speak, read, write, or understand English. Local agencies must adhere to the LEP policies. Procedures taken by the local agency staff must include that there's proper identification and an individual needing the assistance. So documenting in spirit so that everybody knows that if a family comes in, they need an interpreter. Consistent provisions of interpreter services to limited English proficiency participants. So everybody gets a fair, equal opportunity to have an interpreter if that's what they would like to do. And then again, documenting in the record if the interpreter service is refused. Service provisions for LEP participants may depend on the number and frequency of the LEP participants served. So volunteers or children may be used if they are competent enough to understand and interpret English. A shortage of resources does not eliminate the LEP requirement. If they, like I said, if they deny us an interpreter, this must be documented in spirit. So now we're going to go over some potential causes for civil rights complaints. So one cause for a civil rights complaint is stereotyping. So stereotyping is a preconceived or oversimplified generalization involving beliefs about a particular group. It's what we think about a group of people. So some examples. All police officers eat donuts, or all women are bad drivers. So stereotypes can be negative, but they can also be positive. So all breastfeeding women or breastfeeding humans are caring people. That is also a stereotype. Do not consider individual characteristics based on whether we hear, read, or believe, based on how someone supposedly thinks or behaves. There's also a prejudice. So a prejudice is a rigid, unfavorable judgment or opinion formed beforehand without knowledge or examination of the facts. So prejudice is often a prejudgment. It is not factual. It's ignorance-based. And it can be based on race, gender, nationality, social class, or disability. Discrimination is the act of treating people differently due to our prejudice. This is our behavior toward an individual or group. Discrimination involves treating individuals to a group that we've assigned them to. It usually includes keeping people out of activities or places, treating people with less respect, denying people certain things, not providing the same opportunities to everybody, so like trainings or career opportunities or nutrition education. And it is important to remember that discrimination is illegal. So as you know, WIC collects race and ethnicity data. Why do we collect this if we're trying to treat everybody equally? So all USDA funded programs are required to collect this data. The data is used as a tool, and it's to help us to determine how well WIC is reaching their potential eligible participants. So the data helps to identify areas where additional outreach is needed, and it's for no other purpose besides that. USDA requires WIC to tell participants the collection of the information is strictly for statistical reporting requirements and has no effect on the determination of their eligibility for a WIC benefit. So it's important to remind participants this during a certification appointment when we're collecting that data. Just to note, this was new policy last year, but I just want to reiterate it again this year. When an applicant does not provide self-identified racial or ethnicity data, the staff member shall inform the applicant or participant that race and ethnicity will be recorded using visual observation in order for the information to be accurate, to be as accurate as possible. If the participant asks how the data is used, you can explain that the information is used by the USDA to determine how effectively WIC is reaching minority groups and to identify where additional outreach is needed. I do find that when you ask for race and ethnicity data, participants are usually really open with sharing this information from what I have seen personally in clinic. But if you explain to them that you're going to collect it for a specific reason, then they're usually more apt to tell you what race and ethnicity that they choose to identify as. The next section is customer service and conflict resolution. We can often prevent conflicts from occurring by providing excellent customer service to our participants during individual appointments, group education, front desk contacts, phone calls, and the languages and the signs that we have for our outreach materials. Some things to remember that can just help us to prevent conflicts before they happen: to be patient and polite, listen with presence and compassion, avoid sarcasm, be empathetic, and don't be afraid to ask for help with resolving a situation. Smile whenever possible, apologize where appropriate, and to avoid offending anyone, be open to valuing the other person's opinion. Don't feel that you have to have the last word in a conversation, and treat everyone the same way no matter who they are, how they look, or how they act. We also need to impose policies that impact all people the same. And then we need to treat people with dignity and respect. While many conflicts can be resolved using these strategies, your safety is the #1 priority. So call 911 if you need to. It's better to be safe than sorry. Trust your instincts and always work with your supervisor if you're feeling unsafe. So in the event that a participant does feel discriminated against, they want to make a complaint. So what are your responsibilities as a local agency? The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to apologize. You're going to apologize to the participant and inform a supervisor immediately. Just so you know, this complaint that the participant has, they have the opportunity to file a civil rights complaint within 180 days after an incident is reported or it happened. So it doesn't have to be right in that moment, and maybe somebody has come to you after the fact because they felt discriminated against at their appointment 3 months ago with a different staff member. These complaints can be written, verbal, or anonymous. So the next thing that you're going to do is if the supervisor cannot resolve the situation, you're going to share their rights and responsibilities and inform them that they have the right to file a complaint. Then you're going to provide them information on our webpage and on the WIC Shopper app and you're going to go over that with the participant. So you're going to assist the participant with filing the complaint if necessary. If they want to do it on their own, that's also totally fine. Just as a note, our policy CR4, this provides details on how to file a complaint, and I'm going to go over that with you in just a second because we do have a little bit of a change on there. After the complaint, the person says that they would like to make a complaint, you're going to send the complaint to the address listed here on this page. If the participant files the complaint him or herself, provide the address where to send the complaint, or you can do that for them. Please note that the agency must respond to the complaint within 5 days. Public notification. Federal laws require WIC programs to inform participants, potential WIC applicants or participants about program availability. We have to tell them about their rights and responsibilities using the WIC program. We have to tell them that there's a non-discrimination policy and that where they can find non-discrimination information. And we also can help with the complaint procedure. So I'm sure this poster looks familiar to all of you, the Injustice for All posters. The USDA requires that these posters are placed in easily visible spaces. And we do have an updated poster coming, so please be on the lookout for that. This is the most current one that you all have right now, which is September of 2019. But there is going to be updated posters coming out. There are going to be updated posters coming out that should be for 2022, and that will reflect the protected classes that have changed from state protected to federally protected. So for the non-discrimination statement, I'm sure all of you are familiar with this. There are two kinds of non-discrimination statements. There is the full text. Actually, I should say there are three types of non-discrimination statements. There's the full text, which is there's a version that is for print. And then there's also a full version of the non-discrimination statement for web. So the difference between that is that the print version tells you where to mail something, whereas the online version, the web version, has links and hyperlinks that can be clicked. There is also a shortened statement. And the Maine WIC program in policy CR1, we provide information on when and how to use each one of these statements. And these statements, the NDS is not required for nutrition education and breastfeeding promotion materials, but it should be used anytime that the WIC logo is used, anytime that we talk about program eligibility. But if it is a breastfeeding 101 handout created by another program, it's not necessary to have that on there. Again, you can check policy CR1 if you have any questions about when and how to use each statement. So this is the short statement. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. And the short statement may be used if the material is too small to permit the full text. But when you use this statement, be mindful that the text has to be the same size or larger than the body of the material, so the body of the outreach material. This is important because we need to make sure that the importance of the NDS is not overlooked. So we don't want you to have everything in size 24 font and then the NDS in the bottom in size 10 font. It needs to be the same size as the primary focus of the outreach material that you have. So we'll check for compliance on all of this during monitoring visits. So when we complete MERs, we check to ensure that each one of your clinics complies with the civil rights laws and regulations. We check for the posters that are listed on for the the And Justice for All posters. We make sure that those are present in all of your clinics. We check to make sure that staff have attended an annual civil rights training. So if you're here today, work with your supervisor to fill out that attendance form so that you can get credit for being here. We check the physical location to make sure that participants have access to your clinic, without reasonable with reasonable accommodations. So elevators if needed and ramps if needed. And if the state agency, if we find that there is a local agency who has not complied with the civil rights regulations, we'll just work with you during an MER to develop a corrective action plan to resolve these errors. And then we'll follow up with you to make sure that they have been implemented. But for the most part, you all do a really great job with making sure that everybody is taken care of at the WIC clinics. So now I'm just going to go over, I'm sorry, this is super duper tiny. I just wanted you to see, you'll see the updates in our on the webpage on October 1st. But these are our proposed changes for our civil rights policies that are with state plan right now. So they're being reviewed by FNS, and these will be released in October of 2022, and we'll let you know once all of these have been updated to our webpage. Excuse me. So the first change is strictly formatting at CR1. We needed to put a space between two words. I didn't think that was necessary to show you guys. But the next one is CR4, which is the complaint process. That purple writing and the blue writing, those are just, we've removed certain words. So we've removed the NDS and the protected classes from only state to now included under the federal protected classes. If you have any questions about these policy changes or any other questions about filing a complaint or anything like that, please feel free to reach out. But that concludes our civil rights training for this year. So you have all satisfied your civil rights annual training for the federal fiscal year of 23. Please work with your supervisors so that you can get credit for this. And supervisors, once you have all of your all of your staff on, please, one piece of paper would be really nice. Then we can go ahead and give you credit for that during MERs and review purposes. Are there any questions while we're all here? We have a half hour. I was able to get it in really quick today. So if there are any questions or anything, please feel free to pop any questions. Pop any questions into the chat, unmute yourselves, or you can email me. Well, thank you all so much. Have a great day and get 30 minutes back and back to clinic. Thank you.